Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Pmbc meeting for January 24th. I'm going to pull up the agenda, if I can find that. And I'll share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So we've got two warrants tonight. We've got one warrant. It's for Vertex and LLB, and then another warrant for Commodore. The first warrant can be paid upon our approval, and the second warrant for Commodore needs to wait for all parties to sign the GMP, which will probably be sometime next week. So let me pull up the warrant. Well, I've got two warrants here now, so I got to pull up this first one. I suspect we'll have to vote on these independently. So the first warrant is for Vertex Corporation for December, and the second is for January. The first one is for, let me figure this out here a little bit, $8,276.50, and the second is for $672.75. The third invoice is for LLB Architects for December, $14,003.16. I sent this out earlier with all the backup. Are there any questions or comments?
Excuse me, Steve, you might want to call the meeting to order and take the roll call.
Well, I think we generally don't do a roll call.
Okay.
We just kind of identify ourselves as we go through the. But thanks for that, Suresh. I think we'll probably do that in the future. So, is there a motion to? First of all, any questions on the warrant? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. I'll second it.
Okay, Bartlett seconds it. Roll call vote, Bob?
Bob Rumley, yes.
Bartlett?
Bartlett Harvey, yes.
Brian?
Brian Pasquale, yes.
Stacy?
Stacy Damaris, yes.
And did I miss anyone? And Steve, Steve Moore, yes. So motion carries, and I will bring up the second warrant, which is for Commodore. Okay. Flip that right now. And Vertex is recommended approval for this one, but it, as I said, it can't be paid until GMP is signed. So the first Commodore invoice is for is this for December or January? I can't figure that out.
This actually, Steve, would be for November. So what this does is kind of I'm sorry, this one's for December, but it's work that has been preceding up to that for the added pre-construction work that they had done to that date. So this one's dated for the December.
So I think we need to note that they're proceeding with work under the notice to proceed. So until the GMP is signed, we can't pay this, but we can vote to approve it. So we've got two invoices from Commodore so far, $156,268.80, and the second for $294,709.88. A grand total of $450,978.68. Any questions or discussions? Is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion, we approve the the warrant for $450,978.68.
And second,
I can
I'll
second.
second it. Stacy can second it.
a roll call vote. Bob,
Bob Rumley, yes.
Bartlett,
Bartlett Harvey, yes.
Stacy,
Stacy Damaris, yes.
Brian,
Brian Pasquale, yes.
and Steve, yes. So that passes. Thank you. Let's see, we go to, what's the agenda here? Can you guys see the agenda?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Shaker Lane feasibility study.
What about the minutes, Steve?
Oh, thank you. I sent out some edits to the minutes for January 10th. Any discussion on that?
Steve, on the top part of the minutes, the absent, Stacy and I are marked absent, and we're also attendees.
Okay, Marilyn, can you correct that?
Yes.
And then on the second page, the Indian Hill, Mike and yourself were supposed to approve the minutes, and they got Stacy and they were approving the minutes too.
Good point. Okay. Marilyn, you'll make those corrections?
Yep.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Bartlett, is there a second?
I'll second it, Brian.
Second it.
Okay, Brian seconds it. Roll call vote, Bob,
Bob Rumley, yes.
Stacy?
Stacy Damaris, yes.
Stacy, Brian,
Brian Pasquale, yes.
Bartlett,
Bartlett Harvey, yes.
and Steve, yes. Okay. Now we go to the Shaker Lane feasibility study. Stacy, do you have, are you closer to that than I am?
Probably, but I think Steve's here too, right? Is he still here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I can speak briefly based off of what Steve had sent us yesterday, but I'm sure
Right.
you might have some more details to it. So Steve, do you want me to just introduce that topic of the RFS being approved by MSBA?
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, yesterday Steve said that the RFS for the designer services was approved by the MSBA, which is a big hurdle for us. Just getting them to approve that and to make sure that we had everything in line was okay. So we're good. So an advertisement's going to be going out to the central registrar. And other than that, I'm sure Steve has a lot more possibly to say to that, but that's as far as I know.
Yeah, so just a few of the details. So, yeah, I'm having a brain drain. Mark Stafford from TTH has been working on that. The RFS was approved by MSBA. There were some minor changes. A couple of the dates changed, things like that. That was approved. The ad for the Central Register will be released. That will go in Central Register. I believe it's January 31st, which is next week. We got language for the newspaper ad. Ryan's assistant, Lisa, put that together today, and I think released that to the newspaper. So that'll go in the newspaper, and we'll list that through, with Ryan's help, we'll list the RFS on the town website. So that goes out. I should remember the exact dates off the top of my head, but it goes out. We'll get the results back from the prospective designers, and then we have a design team, selection team already selected, ready to go through those proposals. And once we get those, we'll be good to go. So that's where we're at this point in time.
Just a question. Do we have to do anything with combis?
No, Combines is recommended, but it's not it's not required.
Okay, thanks. Any questions or questions for Steve or Stacy? I know that was I was following the emails back and forth. It was kind of and it's going to be indicative of our relationship with MSBA.
Yes, MSBA is very legalistic. Every I has to be dotted, every T has to be crossed. When we submit the RFS, in this case, both for the OPM and the designer, they wanted the document that showed all of the changes to the document so they could track those changes, even though it's their document. So yeah, their MSBA is very legalistic in their approach. And they have to be, I think, with the amount of money they're talking, but we just have to follow their protocol.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Library, any update on that, Brian?
Nothing really to update. With the sewer backup, like I had said last meeting, I did provide the director and the trustees the O&M manuals in case they didn't have them on site. I also requested in conjunction with Littleton Water that if there was an incident or any issues since we've sent that, to let us know immediately so that all parties could be out on site. I have not been notified of any issues that we've had. The only other closeout, I think I alluded to this last meeting, is we did have an inverter switched out on the roof for the solar system up on the roof. There was one that was defective. We did get that all covered under warranty, not only the manufacturer warranty, but the labor to install that was also covered under the 1-year warranty that we get with the that we had per the specification. Regarding the greenhouse lead grant, I do have an email into them to see if there's any update with that. I will also call Johnson Roberts to see if they've been tipped off to anything, but that would be the only hurdle left on the library at this point. But we're closed out from an OPM standpoint. The contractor's closed out, the architect's closed out. But that would be the only thing that's remaining.
So we can actually take this off future agendas.
I would say that's accurate. And if there's anything that does come up, I'll reach out to you, Steve, as the chair, if we need to put something back on to inform the committee.
Sounds good. Okay. Thanks, Brian. Senior Center, Brian?
Sure. Unless you want to do the roof update first, I could do the senior center, whatever works.
Oh, yeah. I need to enlarge this a little bit so I can see it. Yeah, let's do the roof. Brian?
Yeah, I'll be brief. It's not much of an update, but Rockwell Roofing I'll spare you all the details, but there's been some back and forth, and they have committed to getting the last of the work done by the end of next week. And Steve Mark's been on those emails too. So they're going to wrap that up by the end of next week, and then hopefully we can finally get a final walkthrough from the architect and get that project closed out as well.
Is that just flashing around the stacks?
Yeah, it's around the piping coming up through they bought like a prefabricated box to go around the piping penetrations for the HVAC. And it ended up not working for the install, so they ended up custom fabbing something in their shop, and they've got an approved detail that the architect is okay with, and they just have to it's getting fabbed up now. They'll come out and install it next week.
Is there any limitation on temperature when you install that kind of stuff?
That's a good question. I'll ask that question. I'm not sure exactly what product they're using for the sealant, but we can confirm that.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Brian?
Steve Mark has got one.
Yeah, not really a question, but I just want to give you a quick update on the rest of the high school roof. If this is a good time to do that, just to let you know where we stand. Is that all right, Steve?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so if you recall, a year and a half ago, or not even a year ago, we got funding to do a roof study for the high school roof to replace the rest of the roof. That study came back. I forwarded that study both to Ryan's office and to Steve Moore. Steve, you feel free to pass it around to the rest of the PMBC members. There's two reports that I included. One report was from Garland Roofing, who did and again, they're a roofing company, so they did a free assessment of our roof with some estimates for replacing the remaining parts of the high school roof. And then we had Socotec, which is not used to be formerly Russo Bar, did an engineering study on the remaining roof. So both of those reports are available for your perusal and discussion. Basically, the bottom line is the price estimate from Socotec to replace the rest of the roof. And again, I won't get into the details. Some of it is tear off, some of it is go over. There's some repairs to the metal roof that has to be done and things like that. You guys can read the report. That price estimate was a little over 2.5 million. By the time you add design costs, bidding, construction, management costs, and OPM costs, our estimate is a little under 3 million. So 2.968 million is what that number comes out to be, which is a little different from the 4 to 5 million that we had projected and made that request to the town for funding a year or so ago. So I just wanted to let you know that those reports are done. They're out there. You guys can read them. And then we'll work with the town to try to figure, and PMBC to try to figure out what the next step is, funding, timing, and all that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to make the PMBC aware that those reports are out there. Again, Steve and Ryan, I emailed them to you. Feel free to share them with whoever you want. That's all I have.
So Steve, is it your maybe I shouldn't, is the thought process to do the entire remaining work in one contract or split it up?
Well, honestly, I think that's up for discussion. That's up for discussion based on funding available and how we want to do it. I mean, the roof is structured so that, and the report is structured, is broken up into sections. And so you could theoretically go out and do certain sections of the roof based on the funding that you have. I think, in my opinion, that'll drive the price up a little bit because contractors have to do, they have to stage equipment twice. But, I think that's up for discussion, and folks with more experience in that might have a better understanding of that. Maybe Brian Force, as an OP, Steve Moore. I mean, you've done certainly a lot more projects like this than I have. So I'm open to that discussion. My goal is just to get the roof done at some point in time, and let's have a plan to do it, because we are experiencing, I won't say a significant number, but we have our fair share of leaks in the roof that we deal with and we fix and we patch and it comes back and things like that. So it's time to do something with that roof. And in my opinion, I don't think you really want to wait 3 or 4 or 5 years until MSBA funding might be available, but that's just my opinion. So,
Steve, it might be good to prioritize the sections that are in the report, which sections require the most urgent work. And, if we can't do it all at once, then, at least we know which sections require the most urgent.
Yeah, and I think I think the report does that. I'll have to go back and reread it. I don't remember specific details about that language in there for the recommendations, but I believe that's part of that recommendation in the report.
Okay, well, we'll take a look at it.
All right.
Any other questions on the high school roof? All right, over to Brian for the senior center.
Thank you, Steve. And Steve, Mark, if you have any questions about that, just from procurement or project standpoint, just from a OPM's perspective, feel free to just shoot me an email. We can answer any questions that maybe you have.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Regarding the senior center, a lot has been happening behind the scenes. We had a great meeting today with the contractor and with the designer. We're in our submittal phase right now. We're still on schedule right now for construction beginning the first week of March. So Commodore Builders, like you guys discussed earlier, I appreciate you at least entertaining that warrant right now. They've been slow on signing their GMP amendment. We should be getting that in the next day or two. A lot of submittals have been received and turned around at this point. We've gone through a round of RFIs that some subcontractors have had, and we're going to be in a very good position once we mobilize onto the site to actually banging this project out in a short amount of time. We want to get this thing done by March of next year. I will share with you once we do begin construction the critical path schedule that we can post with everyone. We're also working with Liz and her departments about some community outreach, making sure that the neighbors and the town departments are aware of the upcoming construction that's going to be happening. We've also worked with Liz and her department. We're going to explore some fundraising opportunities with the Friends of the COA about some possible donations and recognition that we would be doing in that in the new facility. As one update to the contract and the GMP, I found out as of about an hour ago, I believe I mentioned this last meeting, that we did have a bid protest in our HVAC scope for the project. The protest was granted, which is unfortunate for the town, but it could be a lot worse. So the decision at this point, and I still need to speak with the construction manager and with the old low bidder, but the delta between the two is roughly $15,000, which will be put as another amendment, either in a CM contingency or in a construction contingency that I'll bring to the committee at this point. So it's not the start that we wanted, because obviously we have a lot of submittals in right now, and we wanted to get the HVAC ahead of the game. But our hope is that it's not going to hurt our critical path and the overall construction schedule.
So that would be more appropriate in the CM contingency, wouldn't it?
It could be. I think that, you know, there may be some fees associated with the higher GMP price now that would be coming out of that as well. I'll be dealing with the executive of Commodore as to how this is going to get allocated. Because our total project budget is now going to be locked in. Us as Vertex has our amendment to get us through the closeout of this project. LLB has their amendment to get them through closeout of this project. So we do have a firm total project budget that we'll be working from. So I'll make sure that for next meeting, we will have a kind of a monthly report that we can show the committee the total budget, the schedule, as well as any budget transfers that we may need to do due to this protest that we had.
I know I'm not part of the committee. I hope you don't mind me asking. Brian, what was the basis for the bid protest?
Sure. So in a filed sub bids official bid package, there's a paragraph E in which they need to list any subcontractors that they plan on using on this project. The low bidder did not put any. And for an HVAC scope of this size, this would be like your sheet metal, your insulation, your low voltage wiring. Usually those are the people that you would be carrying on this. Because we're doing CM at risk, the law is a little vague in the paragraph E. They did not list any of their subcontractors. When I found this out, I did reach out to the Attorney General's office, who advised me that this has happened before, and they did not really see much of an issue. However, the second low bidder was still entitled to do a protest, and that's exactly what they did. So we held the protest about 4 weeks ago, just around the holidays, and I think that's why it took so long for the actual decision to come down. I was expecting it a lot sooner, and it went in favor of the second low bidder. So, like I said, it's unfortunate, but we are fortunate that the price discrepancy was very close. And it's nothing that's going to break our total project budget at this point.
Thank you. I was just curious for future bids and learning purposes from my end. So thank you for indulging me.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else on the senior center?
Could I ask a question about that? Brian, do you know if they start construction, do you know what the state of the library parking lot is going to be 2 weeks later on the 15th? Because the library is having a big event on the 15th that they need a lot of spaces for.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. As part of what Commodore is going to need to do is issue their logistics plan. And in short, for your question, there will be tie-ins to the drainage that they need to get out into the parking lot between the library and the senior center. It will not be then. It will be later on, probably in the summer, when they need to do these tie-ins. We're requiring them to let us know when they're going to need access to the parking lot, how long they'll need access to the parking lot,
Okay.
and when it would be put back for use for parking for the library. Because we are using the same team and we had a successful library kind of construction phase, they are engaged with the contract with the Congregation Church down the street for contractor parking again, so that we can minimize any amount of contractor parking that's going to be on site.
Okay. I can.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Bartlett. I'm intending to be at the library then too. I need a place to park. So
Anybody that wants can join playing mini golf in the library that night.
Yeah, great event.
I will say one other item is just the neighbor's residence at 31 Shattuck Street. I believe I told this last meeting, but that is now a vacant residence, and we're going to be using that as our construction headquarters throughout construction as we need it. Commodore will be mobilizing in the next few weeks, poking around, outfitting it for our construction needs. There's also been a draft of a memorandum of understanding between Commodore and the town to make sure that the house is in better shape when they leave it. That's kind of how and they're going to maintain it throughout the year as they operate out of there. One of the items as part of the scope is that we'll be demolishing the garage at the residence, as well as tearing up their leach field and septic system that's out back. So we do have some allowances in place in the construction budget in order to work with Littleton Water about tying to the sewer main that's in Shattuck Street as well, before it gets turned back over to the town.
Any other questions for Brian? We'll move over to Indian Hill, and it's kind of a toss-up. Brian, do you want to take the lead on that?
Yep, sure. So we have a couple members here from LLB, and I'll turn them over just so they can introduce themselves. To give a quick history lesson on Indian Hill, Vertex and LLB were tasked to do a feasibility study last year to see what it was going to cost to renovate the Indian Hill property for the Parks and Rec and the school department. We had some walkthroughs, and with the time that we had, we put together a feasibility study and sent that to a third-party estimator. The price that we got was relatively high, and it was determined at that time that we were not going to put that forth at town meeting. And so at that point, the town put out services for OPM and design firm to get us out to get a bid in hand and bring that to a town meeting with a firm number. And I believe that the intention, and I believe Ryan's on the call as well, is to bring Pmbc into this process as well throughout our design and bidding process, so that we can have more members of this team and input as to what we're going to be bring forward at town meeting for the renovation of this property. Vertex and LOB were selected for this work. Our contracts are now in place. We had a kickoff meeting last week on Friday to kind of reintroduce ourselves with what had been done prior and what needs to be done. And as of right now, there is a on-site meeting with LLB and their consultants tomorrow to go through some of the HVAC systems and the other MEPs that we didn't have time for previously, or we didn't have funding for previously, so that we can flesh out a bid package of drawings that can go out on the street so that we can have a bid in hand for May town meeting. I will kick it over to the representatives from LLB that we have today are Brian Valentine and Jessica White. So I'll let them introduce themselves and kind of what their upcoming schedule is going to be.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Excited to be here. Do want to disclose, Mr. Pasquale, I'm working with you on a separate contract in a separate area. So just want to state that for the record. But we are excited to be continuing on with the Indian Hill project. And we are scheduled, as Brian mentioned, to be out there tomorrow to do the MEP and structural consultants to do their assessments on site for some of the equipment that has, over the course of the year, maybe deteriorated. We were made aware last Friday that 2 of the HVAC units may have stopped working. But we are familiar with the property. We did the initial assessment of the property, and we think there's a lot of value to the town for it. The scope of work generally reflects exterior envelope improvements from the exterior side only, replacing damaged trim that has deteriorated, updating paint, a roof throughout the whole building, new skylight replacement, and then interior is a lot of finish work and minimal architectural intervention as it relates to office layouts. Primarily, the building is in great condition, and so we look to document those changes and get it out to bid.
Thanks, Brian. I do want to reiterate something that Brian Ferrara had sent out. The school department and the Department of Parks and Rec are going to be occupying this building, and Alicia Day is going to be, well, I don't know. Alicia, are you going to be representing Parks and Rec, or are you going to have somebody else represent you guys?
For now, I'll be attending meetings, but the Park Commission, they did talk about electing representatives that would be part of the board. So that's something they didn't come to a consensus at the last Park and Rec meeting. So the next one that we have, I'll be sure that they have a representative.
Excellent, thanks. And Steve, are you going to be the rep for the school department?
In all likelihood, probably yes.
Probably. Yeah, you do everything else. Why not?
So I'll just add one more thing, Steve, is because of the aggressive schedule that we're under and the intention of bringing a hard bid to town meeting in May, if you work your way backwards from there about when things need to go on the warrant, how long a procurement process takes, and when we need to get drawings out on the street, it's very aggressive for this design to come together. And so I think it's important for LLB to come here to these PMBC meetings to kind of provide an update on where we are. I don't believe we're going to have time to do an official construction estimate on this design because of the time crunch that we have. And I think that's going to help. What's going to help is to sit in these meetings and maybe show the committee what we're showing based on what we had in our previous estimate, so that we kind of have a rough idea on where we're going to be on bid day. But the schedule's not going to afford a 3-week drop pencil, send it to an estimator, and then be able to kind of digest it and redesign things. So we may need to be creative, and if we need to put some alternates in the design when we put this out to bid. And I just, I think it's important to get the weigh-in of the PMBC so that we're all in a united front when we do get to town meeting.
Love story for 400. William Goldman.
Yeah, that's a great point, Brian. I don't know if I have the ability to share screen, but I can flash up that
what's the princess, Brian? You got it.
Bid schedule if I'm able to figure this out.
With Mark Darcy over the turkey curry, won't you? He's very rich.
No, it doesn't look like I have the ability to share. Oh, share screen. Here we go.
Shake it off.
We got Jeopardy on somewhere.
Yeah, it's disabled. But we do have a shared. We do have a schedule prepared that gets us bids in hand prior to the May 7th date, and roughly actually around early April, in order for various departments to weigh in and have input. And so, as Brian mentioned, it is pretty aggressive. I see Alicia on. Hi. We've met in the past a lot to determine interviews early on, as it related to that department and what the needs were, which actually ended up informing this project, as well as the school department. So we feel that we have a really good handle on what we need to document to get this out to bid. And so there are just some meetings and decisions that need to happen in a relatively quick fashion. But I don't think that it's out of the realm to be able to do that. As far as alternates go, I think we can put together a comprehensive list of 2 to 3 items that are large packages, easily split out, and should be able to carry some alternates and some fluff in the bid.
So Brian, I'm a little concerned about the statement that we may not be able to get an estimate. I think at the last meeting, there was a statement that AM Fogarty was going to be used as the estimator. Is that not still the case?
They were the estimator that did the feasibility estimate. So what we have now is an estimate that we can escalate out. We can ask P. Timothy from AM Fogarty to estimate this based upon where we are and where we think we're going to be out on the street. But it's the time that it would take to develop the drawings and get them back out to him again to do another full cost estimate that we don't think we can afford with the schedule that's in front of us.
Yeah, it'd probably take about 3 weeks for 2 to 3 weeks for a good estimate.
That's what we were talking about, and it, we were talking about the, true requirement and true benefit to the town of having an estimate in hand versus having a true bid in hand. And, if you weigh the two options, an estimate's great in and of itself. However, the bid is a real world scenario of what it will take someone to do the work. And so, we decided on the Friday last call that given the schedule that we would defer trying to get that estimate done. But, we'll obviously work with the town in whatever capacity they seem, if that's what you want, we'll try to make, something happen. But
yeah, I'm just trying to keep our design within budget and without an estimate.
So yeah, so with that, I hear you. With that, obviously, Pete Timothy, he knows the market. He built in escalation back when he did this, and obviously back when we did this, we were throwing a lot of stuff out there because that time period to get it estimated was a little compressed as well. Since then, we've actually, in talking with Ryan and the town, taken out the exterior improvement package at this point as a potential cost-saving effort. And so when you take that line item or those line items out of the estimate, there's still some fluff built in there, I guess, as we call it, going out to bid, in order to allow some of these other things that may come up and fill some of the unknowns back into where that budget would be.
So would you put some of those exterior items as an alternate?
So right now, the exterior items that we're talking about were related to the parking lot improvements, and that was essentially scabbing out the entire parking lot, repaving and restriping. And so that is no longer on the table. I have not, in fact, signed on my consultant for that work out of the outcome of last week's meeting, given the dollar value that it held, as well as the schedule. So I guess what I'm saying is the estimate that is previously done, there's a dollar value that is no longer being applied for when we go out to bid.
Any thought to maybe putting the roof as one of those exterior items and as an alternate?
The roof was one item that we talked about as a very clean alternate right off the bat. We think the scope is very clear, and that would be our suggestion as one of the alternates that would help the town in the bidding environment You guys are very savvy, the past marketplace has been all over the place, but we think it's come down a little bit and started to control itself. And so the time when this was estimated, in fact, was right within that kind of turmoil. So, if bids are favorable and you put this bid package out and you have a large package like the roof, that could easily help the town accept the bids that come in.
Thank you. Any other questions for Brian?
I did have one. I was just curious. Is the intent, this isn't necessarily for Brian, but just more generally, is the intent with going right into a bid before we have approval for funding to then go execute on that bid right away? Because it just seems like a tight timeline to have that bid still be valid.
So I'll let Ryan answer about the availability and certification of funds. But what we would do is when this does go out to bid, we would make sure in the contract documents that bids are good for a certain amount of time. Usually it's about 60 days that you'd be able to hold be able to issue a notice to proceed at that point. And knowing what our schedule is, we're probably going to be close or right up to that mid-April, late April timeframe when bids would be due. And so we'd make sure that in the bid, the IFB, the invitation for bids, are clear about how long they'd have to hold those bids for.
Okay, so that is the intent, is they give us a number, and then, if it gets approved at town meeting, we can go execute on that bid right away.
That's my understanding. Yep.
Yeah, my understanding is you have to notify actually within 30 days, but I think if we do stipulate that the hold is for a longer duration, we have to identify that. If the bids come in, on and around April 1st and May town meeting is May 7th, obviously that exceeds the 30-day period. So I think, Brian, you're right in that we put a 60-day allotment in there for the ability for the bid to come in, be reviewed and fleshed out internally within the town, presented at town meeting if it's appropriate, and then the after town meeting, the regulations that need to follow in order to actually award. So that makes sense.
Okay.
So I have one question. This is probably too small a job for CM at risk, so I assume it'll be a 149 project.
That's correct.
That's what we were thinking.
Okay. So that would be a design bid build, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Steve?
Yeah.
There's somebody in the waiting room with 617 area
It's
code.
Ryan. He's saying it's Ryan.
Let him
I
in.
don't think he can speak, so he needs to have audio. Yep.
I've got a very small window because I've got share screen. I can't see. I don't have a large, I can't see that.
It looks like you're on there, Ryan. You just have to.
He's in now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's still not working. It shows you're muted.
So who is that?
I do have a question while he's working on trying to get his audio to work. So ultimately, when the estimate came in for the first time that we were going to town meeting and the decision was made that we were going to not go forth with that, one of the things that I don't think Steve and I have had the opportunity to do was go through and see how to itemize those pieces and what we can look at getting rid of or compromise on. So are we going to be able to have a meeting with Steve and I and whomever needs to be there to go through those items so that we can have that opportunity to try to drop those costs down?
Yes, not speaking for Brian Force, but yeah, I think LLB, Brian Force, Vertex, and whomever the town deems appropriate. That's a great meeting to have and probably one to have right off the bat as we focus in on what we'll be documenting for the bid package.
Absolutely.
As I mentioned before, I think there are some larger ticket items that right off the bat, we're going to say strike from the cost estimate initially. And while we don't want to open ourselves up to overspend and overuse those funds, use that, I guess, scope cutting as a buffer in where hopefully the bid will come in.
And I'll speak one thing too, Alicia, and Jessica is on the call right now as well, who does a lot of the interior work with LLB. And sorry, I think I'm getting a little feedback.
Brian, you got echo going on.
There. So furniture would be something that the owner procures. It's not going to be under the contract of a general contractor that goes out to bid. So ultimately we'll be getting some preliminary pricing, and we're making sure that that's part of the budget. I think that also would, why we want to have the PMBC and your guys' involvement as this design evolves. If on bid day these bids are not favorable, maybe there are sacrifices or other things that need to be made from a furniture package that maybe gets us back within budget. But obviously, I think that everything that had been done in that feasibility stage needs to be revisited along with the estimate that we got to see kind of where things are shaking out.
Okay, is that something that we'll be looking to try to organize over the next week?
Yes.
Okay.
Brian, didn't we go looking for furniture for the fire station? And
What did we do for furniture for the fire station? Yeah, we put that out and got it on state bid list as well. Like WB Mason, I believe, was the firm that we used. I know Jessica has a lot of firms that she works with on state bid list that would be looking at the proposed floor plans and then offering some sort of options for it. Obviously, Alicia and her team and Steve and his team would be looking at finishes and how things would kind of match and the quality of the piece that you're getting as well. So yeah, those are all things that need to happen in the near future.
I think I was referencing more of like the functionality of the space. So there were, there's an importance for conference rooms and space like that. I think Steve, I don't want to speak for you, but we had talked about the glass conference room, like when you first enter, but that maybe that's not the way that we go, but what are our other options to be able to ensure that there's enough space for the school department and for Parks and Rec to be able to, have those spaces.
Yeah.
It's just like what we went through with the senior center. It's programmatic discussions and, for space. So Brian Forrest, can you put together kind of a timeline, of when we have to have decisions made, and then we can plug in meetings to, meet those deadlines?
Yep.
Brian, I'll work with you with that on offline. If I don't know if I can screen share or not. It doesn't seem like I have the ability to, but
I think Steve, if you're the leader of the meeting, you'd have to allow him on the participants list.
But we did walk. We did walk the building. We did walk the building with both Alicia as well as the school department, based on floor plans that were presented to us, and those were the basis of our study, and of the programmatic elements that came out of initial interviews fit quite nicely, quite frankly, and so with minimal architectural intervention. So I think that Alicia, you're correct. We should still kind of revisit and put the final pin in it for each of the departments, but I feel that we're there programmatically with some minor adjustments.
So Brian, I made you a co-host, so maybe you can share a screen. Give it a shot.
Let me check it out.
You need to get out of share screen and say allow multiple participants or something like that.
Well, I got a share screen for me, but can you still see the agenda?
No, you're good.
Okay.
Let me see this. Show all windows.
So Brian, while you're doing
Okay,
that, if you could email some dates where we could get together, that would be great. I have some dates coming up where I'm out of town for a couple of days, so
Hello.
we'll have to
Brian, you
work
should
around
be able to
that,
get in now. I changed that.
Okay, so right now, what I'm sharing is the bidding schedule that we put together, that we've presented out there, which has a central register post on or around the 22nd, with a document availability around the 28th of February. You can see the durations that go there through filed sub bids and or GCs, which get us to a bid, receiving a bid on or around April 1st with a town meeting of 5/7. So that was the first item that I just wanted to post up and share. We do think it's feasible. It's tight, but doable. Let me see if I can show up the second document now.
that is an aggressive schedule.
Aggressive is true, yes. Makes it full screen. Pop that up, pop this up, share screen, there it is. And so this is the document that we were working with previously. Let's see if I can advance slides. So this is the program analysis that we did initially as it related to the overall town building. And you can see that Parks and Rec and School Department were documented there. The initial program is a darker color. The proposed program is the in-between, and the lightest most was future growth. And so you can see where these programs kind of aligned within the sweet spot of 13.8 and 4.4. Highlighted out here just for clarity. This is the site proper. Its proximity to the high school, we think plays nicely for both departments. And existing conditions, we have about 26,500 square feet overall, over 3 levels. And so we did document, as we mentioned before, we put together a comprehensive report, but this is a pullout just showing some of the exterior conditions, some rotted trim, repainting, nothing extraordinary, no major structural deficiencies that we're aware of at this point. Cosmetic, which we plan to address as a part of this bid package. Existing conditions inside, relatively well maintained, carpeting and paint, kind of end of useful life for the facility when it was renovated back in the 2000s. But again, that's part of what we're looking at doing, is refreshing it and repurposing it for the new uses. Again, programmatically, as we went through it for School Department and Parks and Rec, we walked through this space, talked about some of the items and what needed to happen. Architecturally, for instance, when we're taking down a wall here to make a larger conference room, talked about making a larger conference room out in this open area. Those are 2 architectural interventions. A lot of the rest of this is seemingly finishes. Lower level, primarily programmatically for Parks and Rec. The highlight of that is going to be the new clubhouse space, which overtakes that lower level area. And we've got a lot of really cool nooks and crannies for the kids to kind of break away and be able to play some games and use some of the equipment that you guys already have. And then the upper level, second floor, again, primarily School Department, and walked through with them programmatically, where some doors might need to change in order to work most effectively. And so we made those documented changes, and that's what was priced out. We talked about some deferred maintenance with the building. One of the items right off the bat, the shingle roof, exterior trim, repaint, some landscaping, minor fire suppression system upgrades. And quite frankly, some of those have been completed due to some pipes that were popped in the interim of actually purchasing the building. So some of those items actually were done. So part of our assessment tomorrow is to go through with our MEPFP team and confirm the exact extent of the upgrades. HVAC equipment maintenance, interior wood floor, refinishing, replacing carpets, interior paint for walls, doors, frames, and ceilings.
Alicia, have you seen this before? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yes, I have.
Okay, good.
Yep. And so then so the first part of that was deferred maintenance that we put together. The second part of that is department relocation, and to make sure that there's security, fire department compliant equipment, technology compliant to town system, interior space reconfiguration, which I touched on for programmatic needs, signage throughout to make sure that it's very clear. We have one building occupying two programs, so wayfinding is going to be critical, but we're engaged to do that with you guys. And then, just calculating moving fees and then new purchases for FF&E items. So that's kind of the depth of where we stopped as a part of the feasibility and schematic design level stuff, and we feel we're excited to move right into DD, CD, and bid. So,
Okay, great. I think Brian Fors is having. Are you still having computer problems, Brian?
Hey,
Didn't you send me a text that you were having?
that was me actually. So, but I'm back.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, any other conversations on Indian Hill?
Can I just say one thing that I think this is a great way to kick things off. I think I would just remind everybody that our goals for the project are fairly modest in size. I think Brian Valentine did a very nice job outlining it, which is basically to tighten up the exterior, new paint, potentially new roof, and in a minor change up inside in terms of trying to accommodate the space for school administration and Parks and Rec. And so I think it's just important to remind people here that, and what we really want to get out of PMBC is to help us properly scope the project and, to bring you into this and provide a value added as we look at this and determine whether or not we're all on the same page with it. And, I also have said this to Steve, I've said this to Alicia and whoever else will listen. I also want the school input and the PRC's input in this to make sure that they're getting a building that they're excited about moving into, that in the end is a project we can all be proud of. And I think at the for what we were able to buy this building for and what it can become, I think we're going to be able to do this in a very cost effective way ultimately, in terms of comparing that to what it would be as if we were starting from scratch and doing new construction. So so that's really what the hope is here in working with PMBC, and just trying to all work together to come to a positive end on that front.
Well said. Yep. Any other discussion?
I mean, I think everyone understands this, and Steve, you mentioned it earlier, but it just seems, and they're Brian Valentine's dates, so I'm sure if he's putting it out there, he feels confident he can do it. But to go from here to a bid set publicly available for a hard bid within a month is a tall ask. So I just want to make sure everyone's kind of aware of that. And Brian, it seems like you're comfortable with that schedule, but it seems like a lot to do in a short amount of time.
Yeah. So we are. I appreciate the honesty there. We're aware of the limits. We were asked, based off the RFQ that was presented to us, to have bids in hand by April 1st. If there's some fluff in that, and the April 1st date we understood was so that it could be floated interdepartmentally within Littleton to be able to build consensus around the town meeting approving it. And so if that date can move at all, then that's going to just give us a little bit more time. But given what I presented today, I think the scope items that you see are straightforward enough to document outlining the MEP guys, right? So their scope is needing to be clarified, but I think it can be clarified within this month and a half. You know, we do have an existing building. It is fully approved under the use of assembly and business. So it's not a change of use. We're not going for any major code changes from that perspective. We are merely using it as a core and shell type of a project, the shell being the exterior upgrades, the interior core being the minor architectural modifications, and then the paint and carpet upgrades. I think it's achievable. It's aggressive. We acknowledge that, but we're here to support you guys to do that. So.
Okay. So, yeah, I don't see in that schedule that there's any accommodation for amendments should questions be, come in.
During bid time?
Yeah, during the procurement phase, Steve?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we'll do is in that bid package, we'll have a hard date on when RFIs are due. And when the date on when those RFIs need to be responded by. And we'll structure it such that it gives LLB enough time to answer them. We do not want a groundbreaking question to come in at the last minute and we have to extend our bid date because we want to be able to give everyone a fair enough shot to do it. So we'll make sure we choose those dates very wisely. In conjunction with the site walkthrough. I anticipate this site walkthrough to be more popular than others. Like the senior center, it was, I think me and one rep from Commodore, and we went and got coffee after because it was a blank space. And so there really wasn't many people to look at it. So this one might be well attended. We'll make sure that we really stress that we want RFIs as early as possible so that they can be answered.
Thanks. Any other questions? All right, we'll go on to member input. Bob, anything?
I'm all set, Steve.
Bartlett?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Brian?
I'm all set. Thank you, Steve.
And I'm all set. So Bob doesn't have to remind me. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Bob Romley will second it.
Okay, all in favor. Bob?
Bob Romley, yes.
Bartlett?
Bartlett RV, yes.
Stacy?
I think it looks like Stacy had to go.
Yeah. Brian?
Brian Pasquale, yes.
And Steve, yes. Motion carries. Thanks for your attendance. The next meeting is scheduled for February 14th. We'll be looking forward to Brian Forrest giving us some dates for meetings in the interim for the Indian Hill project, and we'll go from there.
Thanks to everybody
Thanks,
that showed
everyone.
up too.
Thank you.
Have a
everyone.
great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have to stop